Welcome to the Tea Grannies. I'm Elise.
And I'm Maria. Today we're here to chat all about where writers go wrong when writing about horses. So pour yourself a cup of tea and let's get started.
Hi again. I'm Elise and I'm useless today. I will be interviewing Maria. Maria is our guest today. So I'm not going to introduce her like I normally would because you've listened to us talk quite enough. You know who she is. But you probably know nothing about horses. Like I know nothing about horses. Maria knows everything about horses. So we want to learn about horses because I frequently include them in my work. I think I've got a horse in almost every fantasy draft I've ever written. Because fantasy and transportation.
Ain't no cars.
No. It's the fastest way you're going to travel unless you have teleportation, which I don't think I've ever done that
sort
before.
Of sci-fi more
yeah,
so.
And it really, feels like too much of a magical solution sometimes. So, horses. They tend to fit into fantasy, and I write a lot of that. But we will be talking about other genres a little bit too. So, to start, let's give this more of like a get to know you interview vibe. We'll lean into it. We'll pretend that I don't know you, but don't tell me about your basic life. Just tell me about your horse life. Start by telling me about your secret life as a horse. As an equestrian. Yeah, you're a shapeshifter now. Sorry to spill that tea.
Damn it, everybody knows.
It's supposed to be a secret, damn it.
Yeah.
That was probably not nearly as funny as I thought it was, but tell us about your experience with horses. There we go. And then we'll get into our first page critique like usual. But horses first.
Okay. Well, if you follow me on social media at our Tea Grannies account on Instagram especially, you'll already know that I am a horse girl because my horses are cute and they make it to my stories pretty frequently. So I'm not apologizing for that. According to my parents, I was born absolutely obsessed with horses, sort of like the kind of obsessed where we would drive by a field with horses and I would cry because we didn't stop so I could pet them. I was like that. Such a gem. So after a lot of begging, they put me in riding lessons when I was 8, and I'm 33 now, for reference. I got my first horse when I was 10. His name was Dyak. No, I did not name him. Yes, it's a dumb name. But I was able to keep him until he passed away at the age of 30. And he was a total brat, but also worth his weight in gold. And I miss him so much. I've had a few other horses over the years and have competed in hunters and jumpers on the A circuit in BC and Alberta, as well as in Washington and Oregon. Currently, I have 2 horses. Electra is my very sweet, very retired mare who used to be my jumper, and Ledoux, who is definitely neurodivergent like me and is an amazing competitor. We show in the 1.20 meter jumpers, which is about 4 feet in height. And every year I go into that height and I think I'm going to pee my pants. And every year I show at that height. So here we are. So I'm very involved with my horses' care. I don't keep them at home. I board them out. But the goal is to eventually have property and keep them at home. So I'm pretty involved with them and I am obsessed with them. So I'm probably the best person to ramble about horses in writing.
No probably about it. Have you seen our notes? There's lots of pages. Everyone buckle up.
Guys, there are 9 pages of notes.
Doesn't mean we'll use all of them, but you'll never know either way.
I'm going to try to be concise. I'm going to do my best. But first, we will do our first page critique.
Compassion, attention to detail, drive. According to Maggie Monroe, these make up a homicide detective's arsenal, the 3 traits necessary to solve a murder. The large stucco house perched gargoyle-like on the tree-lined street. Its neighbors were quintessential Vancouver mid-century homes, from the classic BC box to true split levels to ranchers with large yards. Maggie brushed her brown curl away from her face as she evaluated the house. Its clean lines, modern design, and bare landscaping led her to believe it was built within the last few years, maybe even the last year. Gentrification, she scoffed. Every light was on in the house. From her vantage, she counted 5 cameras. Ostentatious construction plus cameras plus double homicide? The markings of a gang hit. Maggie forced herself to keep an open mind, but with the recent uptick in gang violence after about a decade of relative peace, and the fact that Vancouver had little in the way of random murders, it was shaping up to be an open and shut case as far as homicide was concerned. She glanced at her rookie partner. This would have been their first case together, but if her intuition was correct, they'd be handing it off to gangs before midnight. The officer on the scene approached them as they made their way up the stamped concrete path. Maggie recognized him, and from his pleasant expression, he definitely recognized her. As she racked her brain for his name, he started speaking. "Investigators, the first Vic was shot, but you gotta wait for the medical examiner for the second." "Why?" This officer rarely held back his opinion. She narrowed her eyes. "The apparent cause of death and the scene don't match. Spit it out, Roisin." "There's no blood." Maggie's blood ran cold. In the 14 years since her first case, she'd never encountered another bloodless homicide.
So I love a murder mystery, and I love stories set in Vancouver. I think we need more. Especially enjoyed the detail about classic Vancouver houses because they really do have a certain look about them. And if you've been to Vancouver or you live here, you know what I'm talking about. That being said, I think some edits for flow would really make this first page sing. I love the hook at the end, another bloodless murder, but I find the paragraphs before to be a bit distracting. I think having the rookie partner gather the information and inform her of it would work better than introducing another officer. It's like too many things on the first page. The partner should be the more important one for us to meet, but we don't get that. And it would also follow that the senior officer would send their rookie to do like the grunt work and then like gather the details and then report back rather than another officer. If the writer were to change the scene to do that, I think it would give us a better idea of their dynamic as well, because I'm assuming the rookie partner is going to show up throughout the book. Mm-hmm. So it would be nice if we got a bit more, get introduced to them on the first page, and we get an idea of their dynamic. Like, are they kind of student teacher? Is there some tension? You know, I think that would also really help keep us interested in carrying on to the next page.
Yeah. I want to just jump off that. I don't have this in my notes, but I was just thinking that, like, this is under the assumption that the partner is going to be a significant character throughout the book. That might not be the case. And if it's not, like, if they're just kind of, like, they're briefly mentioned because they're not going to be important to the story, we're not really going to get to know them, then I would kind of lean towards, like, they shouldn't be there at all. And if you can, I like what you're saying about condensing those two minor characters into one, because in edits you'll see people talking about that a lot, of like looking at their cast, at their secondary characters, and trying to determine, like, do I have too many people to keep track of? Are there characters that serve different purposes that could both like be merged into one character that does both roles, to make it just less confusing and more streamlined for the reader? It's definitely something to think about, but depends heavily on how involved will this character be in the story. To my actual notes, I also loved the Vancouver details and the accuracy of the descriptions. It felt like I was there, and I think that really brought some realism to the opening, which was really beautiful, and at the same time helped establish the murder mystery tone with that gargoyle-like descriptor. I thought that was really well done, really nice work, and actually recommend using that as your first line, because I think it's going to be more effective overall. And then the ending hook, like Maria said, about the bloodless murders, that was, chef's kiss. That was beautiful. I love how the gothic, creepy vibes come full circle in that moment, and we get a better idea of what we're getting into, and I'm always down for murder. So don't take that to the judge. My main suggestions revolve around pacing for this story, or for this first page. And I should start off by saying, like, this is a pretty tight first page. Like, that we get quite a bit. We get that hook moment within these paragraphs, and that's established really well, which is awesome. But I did find myself wanting just a bit more anticipation build up, I guess, before that mic drop moment. So some of the missing details made things feel a bit rushed to me, and similar to what Maria mentioned, like Maggie's partner, it feels more like a piece of furniture left in the corner than an actual person at this point. They're mentioned, but we get no descriptive details, no backstory details, like not even a line or two, which is all we'd really need to bring that character more to life and to show us like they play a role, they're somewhat significant. It wouldn't need to be heavily detailed, but we do need to see something about this character and why they're there in order for their introduction to even make sense in that moment. And then another note, I found it especially helpful to read this piece out loud. And I think I've said that for the last several, so maybe I should just say that as a blanket statement for all submissions in the future. Read your work out loud. I think the two things that I noticed most strongly was, one, the first line. Those first two lines about compassion, attention to detail, and then the line, according to Maggie Monroe. Those felt very disconnected from the rest of the piece to me, and I think Maria mentioned this as well in her notes. And that goes back to my earlier comment. I think you should start this piece with the large stucco house perched gargoyle-like on the tree-lined street. That establishes our setting and the tone of the story and the genre all at the same time, which is just like really effective first line. Great work. Whereas what we have currently is compassion, attention to detail, drive. It sounds like a job posting for kind of like any job that I've applied for recently. So it feels too generic to really establish the genre that we're going for. And while it does establish like some of the mindset of the main character, I don't think it's necessary. It's especially not necessary as the first line and as the opener. Like we learn those details about Maggie later and it'll be more effective because then at that point we will already care about the character.
Yeah, I also was thinking those first couple lines might be better on like a back cover type situation, or like they have like a little blurb at the very top of the back cover. Yeah. Something like that would work. But it doesn't really give us enough character, I think. Yeah.
I like that suggestion. The other piece that I found helpful to read out loud was the dialogue towards the end leading into that hook. I found it pretty confusing, even reading it out loud after reading it a couple times, trying to figure out who's talking and what kind of emotion is in their tone. Like when, I think his name is Roisin, is telling them the first Vic was shot or whatever, he says investigators, and like when I'm reading it, I think in the recording, I kind of like, it's a bright tone, like, hey, investigators, how's it going? And then the first victim was shot. And like it doesn't sound right to me. Like it's not quite the right transition, but I didn't have any idea from the text itself how he would have said that. Like, is he just kind of a bright, cheery guy and he says that kind of stuff like that? Maybe. But some indication from the narrator is necessary to establish that for us. And then just clearing up who's speaking in response to him. I wasn't sure if it was Maggie or her partner, and I stumbled a little bit over that. But those are, I feel like, relatively minor fixes. We're not looking for like a huge revamp or anything, just some subtler details and some revamping in the finer things. And I think as we've said before, always up for a murder mystery. So thank you for sharing this one with us. And I'm definitely getting some of those like noir investigator vibes from Maggie right now and would love to learn more about her. So kudos to you. So as listeners may be able to imagine, the idea for this episode probably came from one of Maria's many rants about how writers get writing about horses wrong over and over again. And I'm pretty sure I'm guilty of this, and most people that I've read from are guilty of this. So we will be sharing a document in the show notes with just some of the basics of what we're going to talk about today, outlined for future reference for those horse ignorant folk. And you just know that I'm going to be like grabbing that document and poring over it next time I have to write a horse into a scene. Like, okay, when I think back to some of my earliest drafts of like earliest stories, like this is Tween Elise, this is like 12-13, the most embarrassing times, don't dwell on it too long, it's painful.
I burned the stuff I wrote at that age.
I haven't gone that far, but I did definitely get rid of a lot of it. And like I was very much guilty of this. The horses in my books just kind of like they appeared, like they teleported there like magic. Just use teleportation in that case, guys. Just don't even worry about it. So the horses just are suddenly there when they're needed. Maybe there's some mention of like a stable over yonder or whatever, or they hand the reins off to a stable boy. I was like, what? The stable boy just lives there and deals with all the like, how does that work? What? Who is this boy? Where are his parents? Why is he there? And then yeah, that was the horses were just kind of magicked back into the scene later as they were needed. So that's something we're going to talk about. And why don't you just jump into some of your initial notes, and I'll chime in if I think of anything particularly enlightening.
That sounds good. Before I start, I will say full disclosure. Horse people have very strong opinions. So the general care information that I'm going to give you guys is like common knowledge amongst horse people, but there's lots of differing opinions when it comes to training and tack and behavior and things like that. So I just want to note that for you guys. The horse people tend to be very passionate. I think you have to be to ride 1,000-pound animals who are afraid of plastic bags, but it does give us a reputation for being crazy. And because I worked in a tack store for a few years, I can confirm that yes, we are. So just bear that in mind. What I think is going to be the right way to do something might not be the right way for other horse people.
Can you define tack for me?
Oh, yeah. Okay. Sorry.
Let's just start right there.
Right over that.
I've never asked this before.
Tack refers to the things you use to ride your horse, like a saddle, a bridle. Like when we say we're tacking up for a lesson at the barn, like that consists of us getting our horse out. We brush them, put boots on their legs if we're jumping. Then you do your saddle pad saddle. There's a girth, bridle. You get yourself ready. So that's tacking up or tack.
Does tack refer then to the horse rider's equipment as well, or just the like what you put on the horse?
I've always just referred to as like what goes on the horse.
Okay.
And then my equipment's just sort of like my stuff.
Yeah.
You know, helmet, boots. There's not too many things, and breeches and things like that. So I will put definitions in the document for like our common terms. I actually just decided that would work.
Because I've heard that word before, and I've heard you use it, and I've heard other people use it, and I understand it in context, I think, but I just realized in the moment I've never actually had that word defined for me. What does that mean? So we're starting with the basics here. Yeah.
So on to where writers go wrong with this. So I mean, the most common mistake that I see is people riding horses like they are cars. This makes me insane. They're living, breathing, intelligent animals. You don't need to be an expert to include them in your writing, but please just do the bare minimum of research. It's kind of like if you included a dog in your novel and it sits in the corner until you need it for a scene. Like they still exist in your story, even if they're not active in the scene. Off page does not mean they do not continue to exist. They are not like furniture. Your characters will interact with them. So that's why you need to have at least a little bit of knowledge. Otherwise, it comes across as very cardboard-esque.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
And if you're writing fantasy, this kind of is mostly geared towards fantasy writers, I would say. They're mostly used for transportation in like historical fiction and fantasy. So you don't need to use all the information that we're going to share, but it's good for you to know it so that you can bring that part of your story to life. And it helps with your world building and stuff too. So
yeah. Before we even like get into the deep detailed notes, the one thing that I was thinking about when I was doing notes, and where I think I began to improve with including horses, this may have been like before I met you, so you know, who knows. But I started naming them. And y'all can burn me for this in the comments if you want. But yeah, I didn't always give horses names because I wasn't thinking about them in terms of like their personality. I was thinking about them in terms of like they are transportation, and that's the reason that they're here. But I would never do that with like a dog or a cat. I would give the dog or cat a name, and the pet owner would take care of them and have feelings about them, and they would have like interactions and stuff, and that would make sense to me. I just didn't do that with horses for whatever reason. So when I started naming the horses and like thinking about like what name would suit the way that I'm describing this creature, or what would be funny because it goes against what you think you would name the creature, like whatever. It helped me to realize like, no, these are like characters of their own. They have personalities. They react to things differently than another horse might. So they have to be distinct. They have to, have all these details, and establishing like who takes care of them and how does that work? How does that fit into the story? Who like feeds them, waters them? Where do they get those supplies? And all those different things. I started to actually have to think about that because like, okay, now this is a character with needs, and I have to incorporate them, with that in mind, so for step one, for anyone who's like me, name the damn horse. Just start there.
It is an important place to start. I mean, I don't think you have to name all the horses in your fantasy book. You know, if you've got like a war scene and there's like 200 of them, like they don't all need names.
Please do not.
But you know, if like it's like in The Witcher, who I can't remember any of the names right now off the top of my head, but I know he
names his horse. So I wasn't going to mention this one because it might make your horse heart sad. But his horse's name is Roach, and yes, it's like cockroach. And he does that on purpose because he loses so many horses in his line of work that he doesn't want to get attached. So he always names them the same thing and names them something he's not going to get attached to. So, you know, it's a really good way of integrating the horse into the story appropriately for the character, but it sucks. Geralt, you break my heart.
Yes, that would be a part of it right there. That would do it for me. Yep.
So even if it's going to be like that, name the damn horse.
Yes, even that horse has a name. So
no, seriously.
Love it.
And that might all be hearsay. It's something someone told me once. It's not something I've actually researched. I don't know all there is to know about The Witcher. So that's just what I've been told. We're not going to do what your grandma does and says, well, when I was your age, and goes back to like their birth story to start any story. We're not going to define horses for anyone. We started with tack, so I think that's pretty good. We don't need to tell people what horses are. I think they can figure that out for themselves. And if not, there's bigger issues there. But for some introductory info to kind of guide our knowledge discussion, I would like to start with hearing a bit about like different horse types. So what can you tell us about that?
So we'll start with different sizes of horses. There's ponies, horses, and draft horses or heavy horses. They can interchangeable term there. Horses are measured in hands. So back in the grandma's day, they used like the approximate width of a man's hand, which was 4 inches. And that was how they would measure horses. So where we measure them to is like their withers, which is essentially where their neck meets their body. And it's like right where the saddle will sit, right in front of where your saddle sits. And so ponies are a maximum of 14.2 or 14.2 at their withers. So whatever, 14.2
so like from where
times 4.
Their hoof is on the ground to where their withers sits, that's
to where their wither is.
14.2 hands.
Yes. So ponies are that height or smaller. Most horses range from 15.3 to 17.3. Sometimes they're a bit larger. I saw a horse for sale recently that was 18 hands, and I was like, that's way too big for me. Great for a tall person. Draft or heavy horses can vary between like 16 hands and 18 hands or larger. The fun fact, the tallest horse ever recorded was 21.5 hands high. So that's absolutely freaking massive.
Okay.
For reference. And if you follow me on Instagram, you'll notice like my horses are not very large. They're both under 16 hands and they're built on the petite side. So I kind of call them like sports cars. Some horses feel like a pickup truck. Some horses feel like a sports car. And that's my preference for horses anyways. I don't like to be too far from the ground. You don't need to include a horse's height in your story, but where this comes into play is if your character is mounting from the ground, consider how tall the horse is and if it's even doable. I'll have you all know that I cannot get on from the ground. I am 5'6". I'm pretty average height. I've been riding for 25 years. My horses are small, but I can't get my leg to bend that way.
Is that like is that a flexibility thing? Like, is that something
you could often learn? A flexibility thing.
Okay.
Yes. I could when I was a kid, and then I just one day in my 20s couldn't do it anymore.
Oh no.
Oh, rude awakening. It's also harder on their back to get on from the ground because you are putting your foot in the stirrup and you're dragging your weight kind of on their back and then pulling yourself up. So it's much more comfortable for them if you get on from like a step or you know, if you're talking about in your fantasy book, like a tree trunk, a fence. You can also do something called giving a leg up, which I suck at getting and giving leg ups, but I can describe them. Basically, you'll stand beside your horse like you're going to get on, and you will have a friend or someone will grab your left knee. You'll bend your left knee and they'll grab your like shin, and they'll kind of bounce. You usually do it on 3, 1, 2, 3, little bounce, and then you kind of start to heave yourself up, and they boost you at the same time, and you get enough air time that you can swing your leg over.
And then you're not putting all that weight on the horse to drag yourself over.
Yeah, and that's usually how we get like jockeys up in the tack for racing and things like that. They get leg ups, and I suck at getting them because I'm quite clumsy. And I suck at giving them again because I'm quite clumsy. So nobody ever asks me for one, but I can do it in a pinch. I remember my dad giving me a leg up once when I was a kid, and he kind of like, forgot how small I was, and he like launched me to the other side of my horse, and I was like hanging over the other side. And he was like, oops, and I was like, 11 or something.
I love that.
Anyway, there are hundreds of different breeds of horses, so I'm not going to get into them. But similar, like with dogs, people have bred different types of horses for different jobs. So, for example, thoroughbreds have mainly been bred for racing over the years, but in the past they have been crossed with a heavier horse, which has created a type of horse called a warm blood, which is an umbrella term for many different breeds. And they are primarily used in like jumping and dressage. So when you see like the horses at the Olympic level, like generally those are warm bloods. Draft horses were developed like for farm work, for plowing fields and things like that. And ponies are the devil. But sort of kidding, but they're kind of like little hurricanes.
Small and angry. I resonate. Small and angry.
Little man syndrome is totally a thing with ponies. There's also a variety of different colors, but I'm going to include those details in our Google Doc. And also, like, totally can use Pinterest for some inspiration. Just double check you got your color right. As far as genders go, there are stallions, mares, and geldings. So stallions are uncastrated male horses, and geldings are castrated male horses. Mares are female horses. So in general, and these are general terms, hashtag not all men, stallions are more difficult to handle and are best saved for experienced horse people who can deal with them properly. They often need more space from other horses. They tend to bite more. They tend to be just a little more aggressive to handle. Geldings tend to be very sweet and willing. They're nice. Geldings are like for the beginners or whatever. They tend to be a good choice. Mares are my favorite though. They require a bit more tact, and I find them to be very clever, and they really try their hearts out. But that being said, they can be a little bit more cranky, and they really don't like it when you make mistakes, I find. They're a little less forgiving. That's probably the right word. Geldings are a little more forgiving, and mares are a bit more like, get it together or else. So I'm okay with that.
So stallion is you said uncastrated male horse?
Yes.
So there's no distinction between castrated or castrated for female. Is that just you
no,
don't have any process? Like, I'm just thinking of like for cats, you can spay or neuter your cat. Is there anything like that for horses in the same way?
There is, but it's for like extreme cases. Like if a mare has a lot of issues with like her cycle, or a lot of behavioral issues that are attributed to her cycle, her heat cycle, there is that option. But generally, mares are kind of left as is. Okay. And that is one of the other nice things about mares is if you have a mare and then they get injured or something, they're going to be out of work for like 2 years, you can always breed them. There's a lot that goes into breeding, which I'm not even going to get into on this show. But yeah, that's also kind of a nice thing about having mares is if that something happens with them as far as like their soundness, they can be used for breeding.
Well, like you said, breeds, I think a quick Google search, people can handle that on their own. So we'll leave that there for now. But I do want to ask you about horse behavior. And I feel like this is kind of where the fun stuff comes in. So in one of my drafts a little while back, if you remember Mia and Tack,
I do remember.
There's a scene where these characters are sneaking around someone's camp at night with the intention of stealing a horse. And I don't remember exactly, but I think I remember you leaving me a comment about how the horses are reacting to the presence of these people sneaking around. Like they're all tied in this one area of the camp. It's nighttime. There's not a whole lot going on. And the characters get up there. And I think I had the horses like whinnying and like making some noise because stranger, intruder, whatever. And I'm pretty sure you told me that like that is not how that would go typically. Like there's reasons for whinnying, and it's typically not that. And if someone was just like tiptoeing around them, if a horse is going to get spooked, that would look a bit different. So talk to us about behavior. Elaborate on that a bit here for like, what do horses do?
What do horses do? They cost me a lot of money. That's one of the things that they do. No, but in terms of that specific scene, like if a horse sees you approaching, and like they're a broke to ride horse, like they were in that scene for you, they'd probably just kind of notice you and then continue eating because they don't really consider you a threat. You know, you're a human, they're familiar with you. If it was someone who like regularly fed them, they might let out like a little nicker, like a little like type sound. I cannot do a good one. And it's just a bit of it's like a sound of recognition or like a, oh, food type of sound. So sudden movements and loud noises will spook a horse though, which brings us to horses are flight animals. So there's lots of different types of animals out there, but say like a lion is a fight animal. So horses are a flight animal. So when they sense a threat, they flee. They do not fight. And this is actually what makes them unpredictable because a horse can decide that something that shouldn't be scary is scary. We don't know how they perceive their fears. Mm-hmm. So if they see something like a blue tarp and they decide that it's spooky and they go sideways, they can unseat their rider. And that's one of the really cool things about horses is like it goes against their instinct to allow a predator like a human on their back, but they do allow it. And but training a horse is how you work through the flight instinct, but it is always there. Some horses are just more steady in personality than others. Like my friend's horse, Pretzel, he's a very steady boy unless you like turn on the hose. Then he's like, oh, I'm out of here. And then Ledoux is the spook first, ask questions later type, which has been great fun for me. I have gotten a lot better at staying in the saddle. And the other thing I see a lot of is riders talking about horses rearing and bucking, and like the riders are very whatever about it. That can be true. Like if you're familiar with your horse, you know how they are. It's something that they do. Like, yeah, you'd be like, oh, they bucked. They were kind of excited. But in general, bucking and rearing is an undesirable trait in a riding horse. Mm-hmm. Rearing is particularly dangerous. Horses can flip over and land on their rider, and that is super scary. Mm-hmm. Bucking's a bit more common because it can be done just out of enthusiasm. Sometimes it's done from pain, like their saddle doesn't fit properly. Sometimes it's naughty, you know. It can be a learned behavior as well. So that's something... I see it in stories sometimes. I'm like, well, that was not necessary.
Like, okay, I think that was one of the things, actually, the distinction between bucking and rearing is interesting to me. If a horse did spook, are you saying like it's more common that it would buck than rear? Or would it not even buck because it was spooking?
So this is so fun. Horses like to give you combo moves. So a lot of time they will spook. So they will see something and they'll go, oh my God. And they'll like scoot to the side. Mm-hmm. And then say they get spooked again, or they've just decided that they're going to escalate. Mm-hmm. They're kind of bolting off and then they throw in a buck. And you're usually going to go flying when that happens. So a lot of time you get unseated or off balance when they spook to the side, and then they buck, and you're just kind of toast.
Just go.
Yeah, you're gone. And I guess I should also throw this in the terminology, but rearing is when they go up on their hind legs, and you see it a lot in the movies. So thanks, Hollywood.
But it just doesn't happen much, is what you're saying.
Yeah, like it's not super common. It's a very undesirable trait. Like if a horse rears, it's like a big no-no. Like good luck selling that horse or getting someone to ride it.
Yeah. Okay. So it's been like trained out of them for the most part.
Yes. Yeah. And it's something you'll see them do when they're at play in a field or something. You'll see them rear, do like sort of a half-hearted sort of rear when they're playing, but it's not something that they should be doing under saddle. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then bucking, that's
the opposite. So that's when their front legs stay on the ground, back legs go up into the sky. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I can't sit a buck to save my life.
Okay. So then would you fly over the horse's head in that case?
Yeah, the last time, I mean, touch wood, the last time Ledoux bucked me off, we were turning and there was a wall and she bucked and I kind of went off like her shoulder and I went into the wall.
Yeah.
It was very painful. It sounds about as bad as it was. But yeah, it's usually how you go. Gravity. So here's the other thing about riding is there is a point of no return when you fall off. Like there's a point where you can kind of scramble back on or you can catch yourself, but there's a point of no return where like gravity just takes you. Like too bad. Sorry. You're going down.
Okay. So I think that's like kind of important for a writer to think about, like which direction the character goes depends on which way the horse is moving and what action they're taking. So if they're like tipping, like if they're, you said they spook and they kind of list to one side, then your rider is kind of moving forward, but also now to the left. And then they buck, you're probably going to go a bit to the left, like kind of a diagonal almost instead of straight across.
Yes, and I've been on a couple times where a horse has spooked and like they have spooked and I've just kind of stayed in the same place, but I ended up on the ground, obviously. There's a lot. I mean, you can watch. I hate watching them because it's doesn't work for my nerves. But you can watch YouTube videos of people falling off to get a good idea.
That's like, a good idea, actually.
There's some funny ones out there. I personally don't like watching them. I feel like I'm tempting fate if I watch them. But they are definitely something that would be good for some research, so you can see if your character's gonna fall off. Like maybe watch some videos.
What does that look like?
Yeah, there's a lot of velocity too. So yeah. Usually, I'll get to it a bit later.
All right, so that's horse movement and kind of the flight response is strong in them. That's good to know. But coming out of that, now let's talk about some general things of like horse care. So this is probably what a lot of fiction writers are going to need to research a little bit, understand a little bit of, in order to include horses effectively in their story. Like, what does this look like? How does this show up in fiction, and what can you tell us about it?
So I'm going to do like the rapid fire because horse care is a massive, massive topic and I could probably talk about it for hours. Like when people are like, hey, like if you had to speak about a topic for an hour, like
without prep.
On the spot, like what would you talk about? Like this is it for me. Yeah.
Okay.
This is
so
also
so
like,
note for listeners then, like don't feel like you need to include everything that we're talking about in your draft. It's all in the little details and the subtle world building like we've talked about before. So when I'm including a scene with a horse, I just include one or two things. Like they might be brushing them down. They might be feeding them. They might be watering. Almost, I would say never in the same scene are they doing all three. Because typically that's just not necessary. So take notes, try and remember what these different things are so you can vary it, but don't try and do it all at once.
All of it. Yeah, I think the big thing is like I've read a few books where suddenly, a third of the way through there's a horse that's been living on the property this whole time, but it's never been mentioned. No one takes care of it. It's just kind of there and they go to ride it and it's ready to go riding. Like that's how cars work. How horses work. Right. They are domesticated animals and like they could survive in the wild, not super well though. And when people say horses are a lot of work, they mean it. They need to be tended to like at least twice a day, rain or shine. 6 feet of snow, it doesn't matter. The horses need to get fed, their stalls need to be cleaned, their waters need filling, So I'll go through the rapid fire basics for you guys. So for water, horses drink on average 6 to 10 gallons of water a day, which is a lot. And they tend to drink a lot at one time in comparison to like cats or dogs who kind of take like a few laps and kind of go away. Like most horses kind of stick their whole like chin in their water bucket and like chug water. And so they always, of course, prefer fresh and clean water. They will drink out of streams and puddles as needed. I wouldn't recommend getting them to drink out of puddles because there's gross stuff in puddles. You cannot make a horse drink, so keep this in mind. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. That saying comes for a reason. Yeah, exactly. Now for hay and grass. So horses are herbivores and exist on a vegetarian diet, which is high in fiber and forage. So the average horse eats approximately 15 to 20 pounds of hay per day. That can vary size and workload and things like that. Horses that live in a field or in the wild will spend up to 16 hours a day grazing. This is very important for their digestive system. My other fun fact, horses generally sleep standing up. They only sleep, I think it's about 2 hours a night where they get a REM sleep, and that's when they lay down. So that's because they are flight animals, and when they live in the wild, and it's an instinct that they still have, is it's safer for them to be standing. So in a herd in the wild, like some horses will be laying down, and then there will be other horses standing around them as like a protective kind of shield in case there's a predator. That gives them time to get up, and then it gives them all time to flee. Horses, modern horses, I should say, their diets are usually supplemented with grain. So just like with hay, there's many different types for different diets and requirements. But if you're writing a fantasy story, they probably won't need it, or you don't need to include it if you don't want to. Shelter is a necessity, just like with any other animal. Modern horses are stabled at night and turned out in a paddock or a field in the daytime. There's also options for paddocks and fields with like 3-sided shelters. So horses have protection from the elements, but they get to live outside, which is like their natural habitat. Some horses are stalled full time, and they only get to leave when they get ridden, and they tend to be very stressed and very miserable. It's not natural for them. So not recommended.
Yeah.
And as for exercise, well, if a horse is just out in a pasture, they do a good amount of self-exercise, especially if there's other horses with them, because horses are also a herd animal, so they like to travel with the herd, do things with other horses. They like the buddy system. And yeah, but horses that are used for transportation in like fantasy books or in sport are used to getting anywhere from an hour or a few hours of exercise a day. So if a fit horse hasn't been ridden a week, they can be very excitable when they do go out. And an unfit horse is more prone to injury and fatigue as well.
Yeah.
Which takes us to injuries or soundness. So soundness refers to the horse's ability to walk, trot, and canter without limping or without pain. An unsound horse should not be ridden. There are countless types of injuries that can occur. Like I won't even touch that. That could be like a 12-hour episode. But generally, if a horse is injured, like rest is always required. And something you will see in books is like, oh, my horse like got a stone in its shoe and now it's sore. Yeah, that can happen. If there's a stone in their shoe, I mean, you can pick it out with a hoof pick or your finger or whatever. And yeah, it depends, because the horse's foot is actually a very hard thing. But they have when you lift up their foot and look at the bottom side, they have something called a frog, which is like a little triangular, softer part, which is like the shock absorber part of the foot. The frog is the sensitive part. So if a stone gets lodged against the frog, it will probably be sore, but probably not for long. So that's something to think about if you want to include that in your book. It's not usually for a long time. Like if that were to happen in your book and your character got off, took the stone out, and then they maybe walk their horse without getting back on for a while until the horse felt better. Yeah. That's usually it. It's not something you see super frequently, like now, like when you're trail riding, maybe, but like my horse is high maintenance. And so she has these like black pads under her shoes, so she doesn't get rocks in her shoes. They are, of course, more expensive than just doing regular shoes, because why would she make it easy on me?
Spoiled little Ledoux.
Yes, if only she knew. I think she does know. She's just like, I deserve it.
That wouldn't surprise me. There we go. All right. So I feel like we've established some good context here. We've gone through the basics. We've, given some background information. We've established the setting, if you want to use that language. I feel like now we're getting to stuff that writers would really want to know. Whoopsie. Which is like, what are some basic things that a writer should need to know about riding?
Yeah, this is the one that comes up very often in fantasy. So first of all, you need equipment to ride. So when we were talking about tack earlier, that we're back to tack. So tack, there's saddle, bridle, and like a saddle pad are kind of the bare minimum. There's different types of saddles for different disciplines. Like a jumping saddle is different than a dressage saddle and a western saddle. But in general, you can just say saddle because you don't have to go that in depth. Bridles, I tried to simplify this in like a way that would make sense to people. Bridles are like leather straps that go across the horse's forehead, around their cheek, and around their nose, which gives you control over their head. And there's also a bit in their mouth, which is like a rounded metal piece with like usually 2 loops on either side to attach to the bridle. and often has like a link in the middle. Sometimes it's a straight across piece, and that is used to slow down and steer. There are hundreds of different bits out there, but for the purpose of writing about horses, you can just call it the bit or a bit.
Yeah, and if you want to get more specific, you can just look it up. That's what
you can just look it up. Check it out. And we'll get into a bit of like, it's hard to explain riding, I suppose. I tried to do my best in my notes here. So we'll start with mounting, because this is kind of a funny one I see in books a lot of the time, especially if there's a love interest. The guy will just grab the girl and like sweep her up onto the horse. Mm-hmm. And I'm kind of like, my husband's really strong. And I actually don't know that he could do that. Because he essentially would have to lift me over his head.
Yeah, because the horse is probably taller than he is.
It's pretty tall, yeah. So keep that in mind, guys. It's something that I noticed when I'm reading your books. So usually you get on from, at home we have like a mounting block, or like I said, tree trunk, stool, fence, whatever, or leg up. And so you would hold your reins in your left hand, and you'd rest your left hand on the front of the saddle, and you put your right hand on the back of the saddle. So this is so you have some balance and your horse knows you're getting on. You put your left foot in the stirrup, and the stirrup always rests on the ball of your foot. You never put your foot all the way through, because if you fall off, you're going to get dragged because your foot won't come out.
Yikes.
So once it's in, you boost yourself up with your right leg. You swing your leg over their back, and you gently land in the saddle. Do not sack of potatoes. Dump yourself in the saddle. It's not very pleasant for them. And then you get your other foot in your stirrup, and then you'd pick up your reins. So my fun fact about mounting is we always mount from the horse's left, because historically swords were strapped to the left side of the body to be drawn by the right hand, and mounting from the left side kept the weapons out of the way of the horse when you're getting on. Don't want to spear your horse when you're getting on to go to battle. It's a bad look. It'd be embarrassing. But as for actual riding, I mean, it gets more complicated the more you know. Isn't that just lovely? And the higher level you ride at, but the basics, I'm really trying to basic this up for you guys. Your legs are like the gas pedal, and your hands are the brakes. And whatever you do, do not hang on to the brake constantly. Horses don't like that. So some horses require more leg pressure than others to move forward, and different leg aids can be applied to ask the horse to move sideways or turn. And when you're sitting on the horse and you're using your leg to ask them to move forward, you're using your calves, and the rest of you is kind of like the rest of your leg is for balance for the most part.
So not your knees. You're not
your
knees.
Don't squeeze with your knees. Ugh. Please don't squeeze with your knees. Oh, okay. I've seen that in books too. Thank you for reminding me. Squeezing with your knees is wrong. What that does, if you do squeeze with your knees, is it tips your upper body forward and your lower leg back, and it puts you out of balance, and you're way more likely to fall off.
Good to know.
Yeah, so you definitely want to sit quite tall. Like, I think the basic description is, if you're sitting in the saddle, there should be a straight line from the top of your helmet to your heel. So from your top of your head through your elbow, your hip to your heel should be a straight line. So you should be fairly upright, and you're using your legs as balance, and your heels have like an angle, so your heels are pressed down a bit. And that's how you keep yourself in the saddle. And I'm going to try and make this work it's hard when I'm saying it versus like having a horse in front of me and showing people. So I'm doing my best. Yep. So when you start riding, your hips do need to be relaxed so you can follow their movement. And it feels a bit like a sway at the walk, and the trot's more of an up and down. The canter is the fastest, and it's more smooth than the trot for sure. Walk is the slowest, and it's like a 4-beat rhythm. So you could count 1, 2, 3, 4. They put each foot down like individually. There's lots to be learned at the walk. If you can't do anything at the walk, you are not ready to trot, my friend. So trotting is a 2-beat rhythm. Their legs move in like a diagonal pairs. And so it's the most common pace that you would use if you were riding a horse for long distances. You would be walking and trotting for the most part. Yeah. And to keep your weight off their back at the trot, riders will do something that's called posting. and you're essentially lifting your weight off their back every second beat, and then you sit for a beat, up for a beat, and hence the 1 2 1 2. And that is way more comfortable for them and more comfortable for you too, because trot sitting is it's hard, especially for beginners. The amount of beginners I've almost seen go off the side when they try to sit the trot is a lot. And this is where I'm getting to, like, YouTube is going to be your friend a little bit here. So you can look this up just so you get an idea of how it looks. You don't have to describe it like crazy, but you kind of want to get an idea of what it's supposed to look like. Anyway, horses tend to have the most stamina at the trot, and the walk, of course. So the canter is a 3-beat gait, and it's what you would jump out of racehorses gallop, which is like, I'm dumbing this down as much as I can. It's like a really fast canter. And a halt is bringing a horse to a standstill.
Okay.
I feel like that was a lot of information,
No, it was interesting though. I knew like that walk is slowest and trot is next and canter is faster. I didn't know that was as close to galloping. Like canter and galloping are almost more similar than I expected. But I didn't know about the beats, which is very interesting to me as a musician. So I find that cool.
And that's actually one of my things that I do when I'm on course and I'm jumping in a class and I feel like I can't get on a good rhythm. I will like start counting the beats.
Yeah.
And it helps.
It's like piano class and the metronome. Good God.
I was joking that I need like a metronome on my wrist so that I stop going slow and fast.
My smartwatch has a metronome built into it, and it pulses against my wrist. Yeah, you should check for that.
Try that.
Yeah,
oh my gosh.
You should look into it. It's kind of interesting.
I don't care.
I was playing piano for a group the other day, and I was supposed to start the song, and I'm terrible with keeping a steady rhythm. So I was trying to start it and like always too slow or too fast or whatever. So I set it on my wrist, and then I would like shortly before I was supposed to start the intro, I pressed play and I was like, okay. Then I started counting in my head to like try and get the feel for it, and then I would start playing. And
oh my gosh, that's so smart.
It could help.
I should try that.
On that tangent, I didn't expect to be the one like sending us on tangents today, but what are some of the common things that beginner riders struggle with when they're first learning to ride? Because this comes up a lot in fantasy, where we have characters who have never even looked at a horse, let alone touched one. Just kind of like the jump on the back of a horse in time and need. They probably get on from the ground. First mistake. And then they just, they ride perfectly as though they've been doing it their whole lives. Or they get like bucked off once and they're like, no, it's fine. I can get back up and do it again. Like, okay. To me, this sounds like riders are being very naive about the life of horse riding. So what are some things like this that make riding challenging for humans?
So there's a few, but this is a pet peeve of mine because much like any other sport, riding takes practice before you get good at it. So the biggest thing I see with beginners, aside from them being nervous, I would say nerves are probably the main thing, is learning how to balance themselves on the horse and at the different gaits. So balance is very important. It's a lot harder to achieve if you begin riding as an adult. When you're a kid, it comes way more naturally. And I see it even in people that rode as a kid that come back to riding. They pick it back up faster as an adult than if they hadn't ridden as a kid, which is kind of interesting. So if your character is learning to ride, I think it takes a few weeks to even get good enough to walk, trot, and maybe canter comfortably.
And to do that without falling off?
Yeah, to do it all without falling off. Okay. And also like you'll be sore as well. Like I if you've ever been on like one of those like group trail rides, it's like 3 hours long, like your legs hurt the next day. A lot of people get off and they're like, I'm fine. And then the next day they can't get out of bed, So that's also something you can include when you have a character who's just learning to ride. Like have them be sore the next day. Like
Yeah.
that is super normal.
Yeah.
Just like if you had never been to the gym in your life and you went to the gym and you did 60 squats,
Yeah,
you're
no,
going to be sore the next
exactly.
day.
We like to
It's very
bring
similar.
we have a guest pass at our climbing gym that we go to, and we like to bring friends every once in a while. So we brought some friends last weekend with us, and we always like to check in the next day, like, how you feeling? How's it going? You just dragged yourself up the rocks. How's your arms?
I
It's
thought about going
hilarious.
climbing with you before, and then I was like, you know what? I
should.
just don't think I'm cut out
You
for that.
should do it. That'd be so
I'll
fun.
go climbing if you come riding, and then
It's a deal.
we'll
I'll do
call,
it.
yes, we'll call square. Anyway, the other thing I find interesting is when writers show their characters being like really afraid of the horse or really timid, and then like a page later they're riding like they've been riding their whole lives. That's not true, because if you're not comfortable handling a horse on the ground, you're going to be even more scared when you get up in the air, because the ground is further away.
It's further away, and you're in less control once you're now on
Yes,
their back.
you have
Like
less
they are
control.
leading a little bit.
Yes, yeah, and you are supposed to be controlling them.
Yeah.
And this is interesting. Like horses really respect fairness. So you have to be firm enough that they don't take advantage of you, but you have to be fair. Horses do know what fairness is. And it's my little story time. Ledoux has a reputation. She has caused staff members to quit before at the barn because she is a jerk. Her nickname is Ladouche. Yeah. So the thing is with her, if you go up to her and you're timid handling her, she knows you're not going to be able to stop her if she wants to be a pain in the ass. She will levitate the whole time from her stall to her paddock. She'll levitate beside you and like squeal. But if you know what you're doing, you're like, quit it. And she's like, oh, all right. As you wish. So it's a bit like, I mean, with animals and children, there's always the line of like being firm, being fair. And horses are the same way.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like that. The dude is such a character. All right.
He is very special, yes.
Another thing that I also often wonder about, and again, comes up a lot in fantasy, is like traveling on horseback. So you were saying earlier that the walk trot is what you do the most if you're traveling over a long distance.
Yeah.
And if you're like traveling pretty slow and not pushing the horses too hard, this is probably not a big issue as long as you're like feeding and watering and resting them along the way. But what about in scenes where like, I know that I have this in a couple of my drafts of stories, like where you're pushing the horses hard, you're trying to get somewhere in a hurry. So you might be pushing into a canter, into a gallop more often. And I've read some books where like a character will stop somewhere and swap out their horse because they don't have time to wait for the horse to rest. So they'll just swap out for a fresh one. And like if you put a service in place, you can do that. But how far can you like push a horse at a gallop realistically before they need to rest? And then how long would they need to rest before they're ready to go quickly again?
This is kind of one of those tough questions, because when I hear it, I think, how long could I gallop for? And the answer is not that long. Though I'm a regular rider. It's actually, I think, more concerning for me as a rider to try and ride for that long.
Interesting.
But I did have to Google the distance, because I did not know. So a horse that is worked regularly and gallops over long distances a few days a week could go hard for a while. So like a fit horse can walk, I'm using miles because that's what the internet used, even though we are Canadian and it should be in kilometers. Damn it. A fit horse could walk 25 to 35 miles in a day. A horse in very good shape could do up to 50 miles, but that's walking for the most part. If you were to trot and canter the entire way, your horse would probably be too tired to continue after about like 15 miles or less, depending on their fitness level. And terrain and weather also have an impact on this, as well as the weight of the rider and the equipment.
And then you were saying like how fit the rider is. Like the horse can possibly gallop for longer than you can sit in the saddle for.
Yes, this is true. You will get tired and you do get out of breath. That's actually the least realistic thing I see in a lot of writing, is like these people just go off and they gallop their horse, like, oh, the horse is tired, I'm going to swap my horse. What about you? Like, it's very painfully obvious to me that the people writing that have never galloped on a horse in their life or have only ever done it for a couple of minutes, and they get the adrenaline rush and are like, oh, that was so fun, and then they stop. But when you're actually riding, and cantering or galloping for a long time, even trotting for quite a long time, you will be out of breath. Like,
Yeah.
and I'm a regular rider, and you will hear me in my lessons, like fighting for my legs sometimes. Gasping. Yeah. And I go to spin class and stuff too. Like it's not like my cardio is not there.
Yeah.
So I think that's something too. I mean, I would love to see people write more realistically about the people getting tired. Because I think that's actually more of a factor than the horses. You can walk for a long time, but your ass is gonna hurt. Okay. It's gonna hurt. Like, I would actually say we went to the park a couple weeks ago and we did an hour and a half, and it was mostly walking, and I was done. I was ready to get off when I got back to my trailer. I was like, okay, I'm done. So I think, you know, riding for like 6 hours in a day, I mean, you're gonna be sore. But I know, like, when you're in fantasy, and I think of like watching Lord of the Rings and stuff, and like how much people journeyed and rode versus like how I ride for fun now. You can definitely ride for longer, and those horses are fitter because that's something that they do all the time, daily.
They're fitter, and the characters are.
So that's a factor too.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the characters are doing it too. I would say it's just like when you're getting just the trope of like, I'm new to the fantasy world and I have to learn how to sword fight and ride and stuff. Then you need to really bring in the rider's fitness because it's not as easy as it looks.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, when it comes to weather, in the hot weather, like their energy is going to be significantly lower.
Yeah.
And they're also in danger of having health problems like dehydration and a few other things if they get too overheated. So that's something too. I mean, not such a concern in a fantasy world where you control the weather, but if you're in a desert world, something to consider. Maybe use camels instead.
Yeah, that's a good note. I was going to say that's a good note for my current draft. We're in the desert now. I've been thinking about bringing camels into it. And I have ridden a camel, but it was when I was a kid. So I don't know that I remember.
That's cool.
Yeah. I when I was a kid, I rode like
some camel videos.
Yeah. No, it's very weird. Like, it's not, you think it'd be like riding a horse? No. No, it's not. I've done both.
No.
It's very different.
I'd be afraid to do it. It would be weird.
It's not, I don't find it, I mean,
strange.
the most danger you're in is that the camel will spit on you, because they like to do that, but it's just kind of a weird, like, swaying, like when you were saying swaying motion for the walk, like the 4-beat walk, camel, I would say, is even more so of a swaying motion. And
okay, like more dramatically.
Yeah. I think so. And especially like when a camel stands or sits, the way that they stand and sit and the way that their legs work, I think it's backwards to the way that horses do. So when they are getting up, you like are leaning really far forward and you might like slip. Like, you have to be kind of aware of that. And then when they stand, they push their front legs up and you like lean way back. Like, it's a very dramatic movement. It's really weird. Yeah.
Oh, that brings me to actually a reminder then, while we're talking about riding, is if you're riding a horse down a very steep hill or even a medium incline, you will be sitting back because you want to help put their weight on their back end so that you don't go head first.
Yeah.
And then when you're going up a hill, I mean, there's a little bit of like just leaning a little forward to help them out. And that just helps them kind of, it's just like, what you just said with the camel, like you're trying to actually send your weight with them, so it makes sense. Yeah, it's physics, exactly. That's definitely something to consider as well. Yeah.
All right. So we've kind of already covered some of these, but let's condense this into one section just for fun, because this is the part. This is the reason that we recorded this episode. What are the most common mistakes writers make when including horses in their stories? What is your favorite part?
Well, I'll start with my favorite part. The main one is treating them like cars.
Yeah.
So you don't have to include all the facts I've rambled about, but you should kind of consider them when you're doing your world building and your setting and things like that. And your characters are interacting with their horses and their setting and that. So if you have like a character traveling with 2 horses, like they need a stable or a place to safely tie them with some shelter while they're traveling. Horses need to eat and drink and rest. Someone has to put their tack on and remove it. They need to be brushed. Their feet need to be cleaned out of dirt and stones. If they're living in a barn on the property, you can just be like, yeah, there's staff. They take care of the horses, and then you don't have to You don't have to worry about that. That's usually what I do, because otherwise I'll get really caught up in describing the chores, as Elise has already corrected once in one of my drafts. So we don't do that anymore.
I don't even remember that. That's funny.
People are not born knowing how to ride. It's not something that comes naturally to the majority. Even if it does come naturally, you still have to learn the skill. You can't just, you don't just get on a horse and it's magic. Okay. That happens in like kid movies about horses, but not in real life. So your character who just learned to ride is not going to be able to handle like a 6-hour journey, like jumping over hedges and galloping down the beach. That's just, they're not going to be able to do it. Or horses are sentient beings like dogs and cats. They have personalities, they have habits and likes and dislikes. My first horse, Dyak, he loved bananas. But if I offered a banana to Electra or Ledoux, they would be like disgusted with me. They'd be like, get that away from me. So if you want your horsey characters to stand out a little bit, you can have your character showing their empathy and little details like that, a place to do it. Like, they're not like big dogs, but there are some similarities. Like some horses really enjoy being petted. Some really enjoy being groomed. Like Ledoux really loves having her mane brushed, which is so random. She loves it. And some horses don't like certain things. Like Ledoux bit me at the horse show because I was drawing like under her, I would call it her armpit to make it easy for you guys. And she didn't like that. And she bit me so freaking hard. So yeah, it was a huge bruise. It's actually still kind of there. I don't know if you can see it.
Oh no, yes I can. Yikes.
So yeah. And then the other thing that I touched on a little bit is falling off. It happens quickly and it happens a lot. And you don't usually know it's coming. It's a surprise.
Yeah.
So you're going at a high speed. Often you're sitting on a large animal. All it takes is a spook. A horse can trip, buck, and you are toast. And yeah, it hurts. This is fun life tip. If you are falling off, let go of your reins. Your shoulders will be so grateful. Plenty of injuries can be sustained by falling off. So if you have a character who falls off, and they're an adult, they're probably not going to get up and be fine. Kids literally bounce. I used to literally just hit the ground, stand up, and get back on. And now when I fall off, I need like 3 to 5 business days to recover. So keep that in mind. And if you are going riding yourself, I know we're talking about riders here, but if you are going riding, please wear a helmet. It's my PSA. You won't see that in fantasy or historicals, but if you personally ride, please wear one.
Please do.
That's my PSA for the day.
I like it. I was just thinking as you were talking the last few sections about how similar this conversation feels to when I talk about beginner climbers.
Oh my God, I love it.
Yeah. No, you can't scale a cliff without training. You will not make it to the top. You will fall and die. Wear a goddamn helmet. No one at the crag will do it because they think it's lame. But wear the helmet. Like, everyone will wear harness and do rope for the most part. Only the stupid, crazy people will do free solo, which is just like, it's a death wish. Don't do it.
Yeah, don't do that. And no helmet. You can't be cool if you're dead.
So many people don't wear helmets. We don't even have helmets because the people we've gone with just like no one wears a helmet. But then we went outdoor climbing a couple weekends ago with a friend of ours and he has a helmet and he's like, bring helmets. This crag is known for like falling rocks. So, yeah, like rocks can fall. It's more dangerous for the people down below than it is for even the climber. But it was a new kind of climbing for me where you bring the rope with you. So you start with the rope on the ground and you're clipping in as you go. So you're tied in, you get up to the first clip, you clip the rope in, and then like if you fall, you'll get caught by the rope. So the first clip isn't very high up, but it can still be kind of dangerous if you fall at that point. But with this one, like if you're climbing a little bit, so you clip in and then you're climbing above that clip to get to the next one, to clip into the next one. So if you fall before you get to the next clip, you're falling further because you have more rope before you reach the part where you clipped in and then you get caught. So I found that if I was trying to climb without a helmet, I was too scared to go very far because if I fell, I didn't know how my body was going to handle that. And then if I got twisted and hit my head.
I was just going to say you could fall against the rock too.
And then as soon as I tried climbing with a helmet, it felt so much better. Like I felt safe.
Yeah.
So wear the damn helmet.
I won't get on a horse without my helmet.
Good. I'm so glad.
And I see people do it and I'm like, you're dumb.
Stupid. Concussions are the worst. I can speak from experience. And when you start getting one, once you've had one, it's easier to get more. Isn't that fun? So don't do that.
That's Nick, because he had some from hockey, and then he did like MMA stuff, and I was like, you can't be hit in the head anymore. I want you to be a himbo forever, so you can't.
We need to preserve your brain the way it is. Thank you. Okay. So yeah, wear the damn helmet. Name the damn horse. Okay, but we've talked about common mistakes that writers make. And this next question is not, it's not necessarily, I mean, in your opinion, is probably a mistake. But this is more about tropes, which is in line with kind of the beginning of the season. The one horse trope. I know you don't like it. We have talked about this at length. So now the listeners get to hear about why.
Yes. Okay. I think any horse person will tell you that it's not good. Like, saddles are meant for a single person. If you add someone in front or behind you, it's uncomfortable for both of you, but it's also uncomfortable for the horse. And it only works for, I would say short distances, and is best at the walk, and maybe the canter, the trot would be super uncomfortable. And how do I know this? Okay. Every horse crazy kid has tried to ride double with a friend and has quickly learned that it sucks. We used to do it bareback, which was slightly less uncomfortable, but a lot more slippery, and you're way more likely to just slide because you also have someone else relying on you for balance. And it's just it's a bad go all around. And I mean, if you're an adult in the saddle and you have like a smaller person or a child in front of you, like that's a bit more doable, but it's not comfortable for them because the way saddles are set up, like there's nothing comfortable for you to sit on at the front of the saddle.
No.
And then there's their horse's wither right in front of that, which they won't take kindly to you sitting there, and your crotch will hurt. So don't recommend it. And I think the main reason I dislike this trope is because it's often shown in like a romance. And I mean, I guess it's a bit intimate because you're sitting very close together and you're like chest to back or whatever, and their arms are kind of around you. So I can see why people were like, oh, that's like really romantic. Having a leather saddle shoved up your ass while you're sitting in the front, not romantic. And it's also very strange, like people, like I'm gonna get into like the fantasy romance section of this, where like they're getting busy on the horse. Yeah, or hot and bothered. And it's weird, like, would you sit on your dog and come onto your partner? Like you wouldn't. But please don't do it to horses. Like, it's so weird to me. That's a live animal. Like, it's so weird to me.
When I saw that note about like, would you do it with your dog? Then no, I can never unsee that. Like, I can never unthink that. That is in my brain now.
No one else can unhear it now that they've heard me say it. So I know a lot of people like the one horse trope, and it will persist. But I don't know a single horse person that is on board with it. The reality is too unpleasant, and it's too weird. It's too weird, I think. Maybe just because, like, I know horses on a different level, they have so much personality, and they're like their own little, being. It's just super strange to me.
No. I'm not like big on animals or anything. Like, I like them just fine. I don't have any pets or anything. But even to me, like, that's just like, okay, never gonna write that trope.
That's weird.
Never gonna write that trope.
Yeah, it doesn't. I think like, people are like, oh, it's like being in the backseat of a car, but it's not. So please don't.
Yeah.
Please find other ways to have the one bed trope's great.
Use your other tropes. Don't involve horses. We'll all be better for it.
Yes.
Okay. So, I mean, that's a good chunk of information that we have gone through. And I think I have found it very interesting, even though, like, we've talked about some of these things already, but not in this much detail. So I've learned things, and I find that really valuable. So, like, I know if I want to write about horses and have them play a more significant role in my work, I can look up articles and I can Google things, and I'll do that, and I have done that. But it's also good to know, like, there are people who know shit that you can talk to, and that's really nice. Speaking from experience, I can just,
Yeah.
Maria, take these pages and make them something beautiful. Like, we know we can send you a DM or an email, and me and the writing group regularly send you pages with placeholders, like, how do you horse? But
Yeah, I love those. I love getting those. I'm like, allow me.
all of my training has prepared me for this moment.
Pretty much.
But there are other people out there with lots of like specific knowledge for the horse world. So like, who else would you recommend talking to, or for listeners to reach out to? What kind of people could we talk to ask questions?
I would definitely reach out to other horse people. Don't reach out to like the famous ones on like Instagram. They won't answer.
Won't answer you.
Yeah, try and find some like lower level people who like actually see their DMs. It's usually a good idea. But my number one recommendation is to go for a trail ride. So there's usually group trail rides in most parks, in most areas. I know if you live in the city, you're going to have to drive a little bit to do this, but the horses are usually like laid back and like this is kind of their job. It's pretty safe. And it's really valuable experience if you're planning to include horses in your writing and your stories. Google's a great resource, of course, but you will find conflicting information just like with anything, because a lot of horse people tend to believe that their way is the right way. So steer clear of the impassioned and the argumentative. You're just not going to get anywhere. Try and go for facts as much as possible. I would also say if you don't want to reach out to someone, try YouTube. There's tons of YouTube out there. There's also tons of pages on like Facebook and Instagram, like horse magazines. There's like Chronicle of the Horse and things like that. And they tend to be more like specific to sports, but there's, good information there too. But yeah, YouTube's usually pretty good. Like I wasn't sure how to clip my horse's head. Like we shave them in the winter so that they don't get sweaty and wet and then cold when they're working. And I just watched a professional, like very famous groom do a clip of a horse's head on YouTube, and then I clipped my horse's head. Like stuff like that. Yeah. Even watching stuff like that, even though you're not going to use that knowledge, I think just seeing people interact with horses and handle them will give you a better idea of their body language and the people's body language with them. So I'd say if you can't go trail riding or you don't want to, that videos are going to be your next best resource. And I'm always happy to answer messages. If you want to DM me on our Tea Granny's Instagram, or you can shoot me an email, I'm always happy to help.
Okay, and in that vein, for people like me who don't like talking to other human beings, do you have
for the introvert?
For the introverts of the world, the hermits, books, movies, shows that you would recommend as like, watch this to get a good idea of like what does a good horse riding, or like what does it look like when it's done well?
I do love being a horse girl because I was like, poof, I got these covered. I would highly recommend watching and reading Black Beauty. My favorite version of the movie, I think it's 1994. It has quite a few like famous British actors in it.
Fun.
And it's told from the horse's point of view. And I think that is why it's one of my favorite stories of all time with horses in it. And I think it's just a great story in general. And the movie is really well done. Hidalgo is a great movie. It's about an endurance race. Yes. Yeah. And they're doing an endurance race. Sorry, Winnie was shaking. And it has Viggo Mortensen in it. And he's actually a very avid horseman. He tends to buy a lot of the horses that he rides in his films, which I love. I love that.
Is Hidalgo the one where he's racing across the Sahara? Or a desert or something?
I think it's a desert. Yeah, I haven't watched it in a while, but I love the horse in that movie. It's so cute. So that one's really good. I would say Lord of the Rings, both the books and the films do a good job with the horses, and so does The Witcher, as we discussed earlier. The horse has the horse is a character on its own, and you see it being cared for and stuff like that. As far as books, for me, the top recommendation is a historical romance, and it's called The Siren of Sussex by Mimi Matthews, sorry. And it's part of her Bells of London series. The third one comes out soon. I asked her a question on Reddit AMA, and it turns out she's a dressage rider, so she knows what she's talking about.
Fun.
And I thought she wrote them really well, and because it's historical, you can definitely transfer a lot of that knowledge to fantasy because it tends to lean more historical. If you want to read something that's more contemporary, the Chestnut Spring series by Elsie Silver is very well done. The horses are not really the main focus, but the main characters like live on a ranch and they ride, and they're all involved in the horse world in some way. And I met her at an author signing in August, and she was very lovely.
Fun. Yeah. Cool. I was just thinking of another title because I was trying to rack my brain. Like, I wouldn't know if the horses are represented well or not in most of the stuff that I read. But one that spends a lot of time talking about the horses is The Bear and the Nightingale by Katherine Arden.
Oh, yes. Yeah, that one's good too.
Yeah?
Yes.
Okay.
I remember reading that one. Yeah, I remember that one being good too. And like I said, I've said a couple times this episode, you don't need to use all of this information.
Right.
And it's not the end of the world if your horses are not perfect in your story. It's just something that I've noticed with a lot of writers, a lot of fantasy writers in particular. This is a step of research that they tend to skip over. And I can understand why, because fantasy world building is intense, and you're like, horses, like, I don't need to do a lot with that, right? Yeah, it's not that hard. But it does. I've read a couple books, and I won't name them because I don't like to shit on other books. Where the horses are not written well, and for someone who's not a horse person, it might not bother them, but to me it also shows a lack of care for your craft. It's something that you should, if you're going to use it, know how to use it.
And I think on that note a bit, like, readers care about the details. They won't care about everything, and they won't know enough about everything to recognize like when something isn't right. But for those readers that do have even just like some hobbyist horse knowledge, they like horses, they've read up on them, maybe they don't ride them, but they know a lot about it, the incorrect details will pull them out and will cause them to lose trust in you as a writer. They won't trust your narrating. They won't trust your other details because, like, well, you didn't research that, so who's to say what else you didn't research? What did you skip? So even these like seemingly little things, they matter. And again, you don't have to do all of it. It is a lot of information to comb through. It can be overwhelming, but it's I keep coming back to this. It's in the little details. Like, what makes a story really powerful is when someone does enough research to like have a passing understanding of certain elements and include those elements that you understand really well that fit your story. It's a line here, it's a line there. It's not like a whole paragraph of info dumping. We don't need more of that.
No more info especially. Even though I feel like I just info dumped for like an hour.
Well,
no one else is allowed to do it.
It's a different format, right? Like when you think about a podcast episode about a very specific topic, okay, we're doing a deep dive. We've done deep dives into sci-fi, we've done deep dives into fantasy. We're going a deep dive into horses, horse care, representing horses well in fiction. And there's a lot of stuff. Like you can kind of cherry pick some of the details here. You don't have to include everything. You can pick like, this fits really well with this character and their character development, so I'm going to throw that detail in there. Or like, this is the kind of relationship I have with my pets, and I want this character to have a really fun kind of dynamic with their horse, so I'm going to throw that in there, and that's what I'm going to focus on.
And I love that too. And for the horse people who are listening, like, you missed this, that, and the next thing. I know. Okay, this was 9 pages of notes, and Elise was like, no more notes.
No more notes. We can't go over 2 hours of content.
I had to cherry pick what was going to make it in this episode, so I just tried to do a broad focus. And the Google Doc that we are going to link for you guys will have some of what we talked about today. It's mostly going to be the factual stuff for you to refer to when you're working on your drafts, and hopefully you find that helpful. And you're free to reach out to me on our Instagram. That's the one that I am on the most, I would say. And I'm always happy to share photos and videos of my horses too, if that's what you want to see. But if you follow us and you watch my stories, you're gonna get those. No problem. You don't have to ask. Yeah, they're just there. And that is the tea on including horses in your writing. As always, you can follow us on Instagram and Threads at the Tea Grannies Podcast and reach us anytime at theteagrannies@gmail.com. Happy writing.